Sacco and Felice, New York and New Jersey's premier attorneys at law. Their team brings decades of experience across a wide range of practice areas. Whatever life brings, they're your legal team. From everyday matters to complex cases, they've got you covered with the experience you need and the results you want. Because when life gets complicated, they make it simple. SaccoFelice.com. SACCOFILLAS.com. 2 C's, 2 L's.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
We're back on the left versus the right. And Jake Novak has had a couple of minutes to ponder over my question to him, which is really about where this sudden understanding of Iran, this sudden outpouring of feeling for them. They are the worst, despotic, just totally fraudulent government that's appeared on this planet in a while. And you're up against some stiff competition when you get accused of that. How are they getting away with this?
You know, this is really reminding me of something that a child psychologist once told me. He said that siblings very often have these terrible rivalries when they're school age. They really hate each other. But when you have a brother or a sister who's getting beaten up on the schoolyard by a bunch of thugs, and no matter how much you hate him or her, if you join in the beating up, then the psychologist told me that's a true psychopath. Like, that's someone who needs to be institutionalized right away. Maybe not necessarily beating up all the thugs and saving the sibling, but to actually join in the beating means that there's something really, really wrong with you. And that's the stage that we have now reached with this incredible Trump hatred. You know, I don't know. I don't know why I'm immune one way or the other, but I just don't think about the man personally, like, almost ever. And I know he's been in the public eye, the most known individual in the world for the last 11 years at least. It doesn't mean I only look at his policies. It doesn't mean I don't pay attention to it, but he just doesn't have any space in my head. I'm interested in the policies. I'm interested in the other things that are going on. That doesn't mean I'm not an emotional person, and I'm not claiming to be a superhuman either. There are things that do hit me emotionally. What hits me emotionally is the people who respond to him emotionally. That's who I have an emotional reaction to. People who are overly slavish to this president, who go to 50 rallies, and the people, more importantly, the people who hate him so much that they're clearly willing to burn it all down, both in a physical way and theoretically. You know, they're burning down every right or wrong. It's just now their only right or wrong compass is this something that Trump and his voters like, or is this something that they don't like? And if it's something that he or the voters like, they don't like it, and vice versa. And that's it. That's their only moral compass now. These people are dangerous. They're dangerous to themselves. They're dangerous to this country. And their decision to cheerlead Iran, the most egregious example, Governor, being on Thursday, when the United States destroyed a military bridge that was only used by the IRGC to move men and material from one spot to the next. When that bridge was destroyed by the United States, the left in this country, I shouldn't even call them the left, just the anti-Trump forces, both in the mainstream media and on social media, decried this as some kind of terrible attack on infrastructure. On the same day, a young man was executed because in 2007, when he was really young, he spoke up against the regime, and they had no outrage over that. If you are so morally destroyed because of your hatred of anything, including this president, you're a danger to yourself and to everyone around you, and definitely this country, and that I do have an emotional reaction to.
Well, I've told this story once before on this show, Jake, so I'll tell it to you, that when I was governor, President Trump did not like one of my choices. And it was the choice to fulfill the position that I held, which was lieutenant governor. So he goes on, these days, I can't remember whether it was a TV show or something, and he says, the guy's a bum. The guy, he says, you know, these things he says, he doesn't know anything. He says, I don't know what Governor Paterson was thinking about when he appointed him. He said, but I've spoken to him, and he says if he could do it again, he wouldn't do it again. So here's Trump throwing me in front of the bus and then pulling me up after the bus runs over me. And so I, in response, what I did is I called him up. Now, what a lot of people do in those situations is they get right in the media and tell their side of the story.
Right.
But I called him up. I said, Donald, I never spoke to you about this. And he said, come on. The guy's he doesn't know what he's doing. You can't build anything. He's always on commissions trying to stop people from doing stuff. I said, but even if that's the case, I didn't say that about him. And I'm releasing I'm sending a press release to let it be known I didn't say anything about it. And he goes, come on. You're not going to take me on an issue like this, are you? It's like I can't believe the few people who I've talked to who are as interesting, I'll say, one way or the other as he is. So time goes on, and, eventually I served out my term, and I run into President Trump a year and a half ago at the annual dinner that they have for the Catholic Church,
right? And
we're walking around and we're talking. It's the hour before the dinner is going to begin, and Trump comes up to me and he says hello, and I tell him, there was somebody who I picked to work with, who you couldn't stand, and I wish I could turn the clock back and had listened to you at the point. He goes, but what I did is there were a lot of people standing around him. I said it to him, and I said, so I kind of hit him on the arm and walked away. Maybe I walked 15 feet away. I look, he's right behind me. Who was it? David, who was it? Who was it? Who was it?
Forgot.
So I tell him who it was, and he says, that guy, you couldn't build a tree house in New York without him coming in and wanting, there'd be all these issues had to be resolved and that kind of thing. And really, I think that a lot of what you see with him isn't necessarily preordained. I think it's how he feels at the moment, and sometimes it's, pretty insulting to whoever's on the other end of it. But sometimes it's how a lot of other people feel. And I think that's why he hasn't lost his standing with his greatest supporters.
Yeah. Also, look, when he first started running for president in 2015 and going into 2016, I laughed more often than anything else when I heard his speeches. Not because I was laughing at him, but just because I thought it was funny. He reminded me of the 70 to 75-year-old men that were a big part of my life growing up. And I realized when other people in my newsroom at the time, I was at CNBC at the time, weren't responding the same way, I realized it was because they didn't have that kind of experience. Later I asked them, do you guys know anybody in their 70s? Even then, as adults, they didn't. And there's a certain New Yorker type guy, kind of a loudmouth, usually a little bit of a braggart, who at the end of the day, you kind of know they're harmless, but they're a sweetheart, actually, or they're actually just a decent person. It's just like in person, they're going to be pushy, they're going to be brash. I'm not saying Donald Trump is that guy necessarily, but he really reminds me of those kinds of people. And that's why I'm not going crazy for him either way. And that's, by the way, is a great, healthy way to be. If you don't know the person personally and you're obsessing about them positively or negatively, stop. Just stop. It's not good for you.
That's excellent advice. It really is. Because some people, when they get going, you can't stop them. And then they come up with ideas that aren't even true, But in terms now of the strategy for where we are, how do you think this plays out? I don't think anybody really knows. So your guess is as good as mine.
Well, one of the things that I'm seeing very, very clearly is President Trump is either just either an accident, or he's very acutely aware that usually by this point in any second-term president's term, they're already basically a lame duck. And President Trump doesn't want that. I am convinced that the entire narrative of him saying he might run for the third term is not meant seriously. It's meant to dissuade talk of succeeding him. Because as long as he's president, he wants to be sure that he has as much authority as possible within his own party, and he's the focus of everyone's attention. Because, again, in most presidencies, by this time, everyone's obsessing about the next presidential election.
Jake, this is a salient point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm rolling the clock back in my mind, and I'm thinking about they don't even usually wait until the last 2 years before the 4 years of the second term occurs. They're out, campaigning and carrying on about different things pretty much from the time that the president is sworn in to their second term. And I also think you're right. I don't think he's going to push for a third term, but I think he wants to command the stage for as long as he can. And who can blame him?
Yeah, I mean, this has to be what goes on. Usually at this point, presidents in their second term start thinking about some kind of foreign policy thing they can do behind the scenes without a lot of congressional interference and without a lot of inter-party issues. So for people like Bill Clinton, he really dedicated a lot of that last period of his presidency to trying to get a definitive Israeli-Palestinian peace deal, something that he hammered out very well. It was incredibly favorable to Yasser Arafat and the Palestinians, and as Bill Clinton will tell anyone who will listen, Arafat rejected it, and Clinton never forgave him for it, and the world shouldn't forgive him for it. People like, Ronald Reagan, he was absolutely committed to a more tangible agreement with the Soviets. And at first there was a false start, the famous Reykjavik summit, where Reagan wanted to get some major concessions from the Soviets, and they insisted on President Reagan giving up what was then called the Star Wars program. Good thing he didn't, because that was the genesis of the Iron Dome and all those other kinds of systems. So good thing he didn't do that there. Yeah. But a year later, he did get some very big deals with Gorbachev and the Soviets. But President Trump is not going off into the sunset in that way. And he's also not going to be obsessed, I think, about the midterm elections, which is scary for a lot of Republicans. It doesn't look like the Republicans are going to hold the House. That could change. I'm not completely black-pilling on it, as the kids say today. It's possible they can hold it, especially if the war ends and the economy really rebounds. It's going to be hard to get away from that positive bandwagon, so that could really help. But you know what? I would rather have a president who's not worried about the midterm election results, no matter how dire they might be for him in America, because the Democrats will do some nasty stuff in the House. But as long as the Republicans hold the Senate, which I'm not worried about, I do believe the Republicans will hold the Senate, I don't think it's right for a president to worry too much about midterm election polls, which he really can't control very much anyway. There's a myth, well, if Trump really gets involved. Myth. It's not true. It's not much you can do as an incumbent president to sway the midterms. I've never believed that.
Oh, and even in the past, on some situations that I remember, the president might have done a rally with someone somewhere. There's another, 150 days until we're going to find out what actually happens. But the president's intervention is, I think, over exaggerated. It's not going to make that much of a difference.
Yeah, and there's not going to be a huge turnout because he's not on the ballot, and there are just some people, not only with this president, but this was certainly true of President Reagan, who won't come out to vote unless he's on the ballot. And then you have presidents who are really at the worst point in their presidency, and they still kind of win the midterms. The 1998 midterms under Clinton, at the height of the Lewinsky scandal, when his popularity was weak, the Democrats held court. Yeah, they held their ground, held serve, I should say. So, I mean, honestly, stop pretending that the sitting president can do much in these midterm elections. I've never believed that, and he needs to go out and be his president and do his presidency the way he needs to do it. And if the Republican Party wants to win the House and keep the House, let them work harder to find better candidates, and let them work harder to defeat the voter suppression that is local elections in this country, statewide elections in this country. The primaries are held on days when working people are at work. The unions get a day off, a paid day off, not only to vote, but to organize. The Republicans need to find a way to go to their biggest donors and say, stop asking for your return on investment every time we ask you for money. Here's your return on investment. You get to keep your country, okay? The Democrats, when they donate, it's like tithing to them because they're not usually religious. They need to get religion in the Republican Party about donating and stop thinking about, what financial benefits they're going to get from it. You get to keep your country. That's your benefit.
Brilliantly said. I need a minute to think about that, Jake. So I'm going to take one. We'll be back on the left versus the right. You are here with David Paterson, and I'm stunned into almost disbelief by Jake, but he'll be back to further explain it right after this.
Listen to this podcast now
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.